Greetings, fellow travelers on the endless wheel of time, and welcome to another episode of Ramblings, an Unrepentant Geeking podcast. As always, I'm your host, Shaun, Chrono, and today I got something a little different for you guys. But before we get to that, first let me get some quick minutiae out of the way. As always, you can head over to unrepentantgeeking.com to see more from me, including more videos and more podcasts. It's all there. You can also, of course, find my work on Channel Awesome and on YouTube under Storyteller SJK. Finally, you can head over to patreon.com/unrepentantgeeking.com to help support the show. If you like what you're about to hear, please consider throwing a couple dollars my way. Even just a little bit of support helps immensely. I'm always struggling a bit to keep things going around here. I admit money's a bit tight right now, but I'm as dedicated as ever to producing quality content for you guys. And, if you want to pay me back a little, it'd be appreciated, no pressure, just any little bit of help would be helpful. Barring that, at the very least, please spread the word, let people know, direct them towards the show. That's all I ask. Just give what help, what support you can. Thank you. For the last few months, I've been working with frequent guest and friend of the show, Petros Shaun, aka the host of My Life as a Video Game, a terrific series that you absolutely should go check out as soon as you're done listening/watching this. Anyways, Petros and I have been, basically talking about each of the Final Fantasy games, one of the biggest, most important, most influential video game series of all time. And as part of that, I couldn't let the SNES era of Final Fantasy go by without talking about, technically not a Final Fantasy game, but still one of the greatest games ever made, one of my favorite games, easily in my top 5, Chrono Trigger. So, it's still going to be a while before we get the retrospective started, but since today, as of this recording, August 22nd, marks the 20th anniversary of Chrono Trigger's release here in North America, I thought I'd go ahead and release what we have so far just for the section we did on Chrono Trigger. Think of it as a tease, as a sneak peek of what is to come. And also think of it a way as celebrating one of the finest games ever made. This one was special, but hey, I've already talked quite a bit about why it's special, and so does Petros, so I'm just going to shut up now and throw to that. Enjoy! Alright, so now you might be thinking, technically, we're done with the SNES era of Final Fantasy games. And yeah, technically you're right, but if you think I'm going to do a retrospective like this and not take the opportunity to talk about Chrono Trigger some, you crazy. Seriously, I mean, I'm stretching things a bit, but damn it, this is one of the greatest games ever made. And hey, it's not like it's not completely connected, considering, the designer was Hironobu Sakakachi, the creator of Final Fantasy, and you also had Nobu Uematsu, and I'm sorry as always for butchering names, contributing to the music, and it's just, we'll just talk about it a little bit. I mean, we talked about earlier about, which I've mentioned several times, this might be my favorite Final Fantasy and all that, but if we include Chrono Trigger, there's no question, Chrono Trigger is my favorite. Chrono Trigger is probably still my favorite RPG of all time. This was a game I played through. I must have put hundreds of hours into this game back when it first came out. I mentioned before that my brothers and I would play these games together at this point, and we were in love, absolutely in love with Chrono Trigger, and especially because it was our introduction to the concept of New Game Plus, which was like, finally we could replay with, without having to grind again. Oh, and by the way, it is a goddamn crime that every single RPG since then has not come with a New Game Plus. That should be required in all RPGs, Japanese, Western, whatever. I feel very strongly on that fact. You should have New Game Plus in everything. But regardless, before I hog everything, what are your general thoughts on Chrono Trigger, Petros?
Chrono Trigger is an amazing game that, frankly, I credit as the game that got me back into gaming, basically. I went through a bit of a period between the ages of sort of 16 to 20 where I just kind of stopped playing video games as much as I used to. Ironically, I must have amassed maybe my largest game collection at that time. Like, the console I have the most games for was the PlayStation 2. But I kind of stopped playing games as much as I used to back then. I didn't get the Wii on launch or the PS3 on launch or anything like that, and I just wasn't as into gaming as I used to be. And one day I was at college at the time, and I was about 20 years old, and I just bought an Xbox controller for my PC because I was doing some testing. I was on an RPG Maker project that I was working on, and I'd heard a lot of things about this Chrono Trigger game, so I played it, possibly not so legally. Sorry, Square Enix, don't send a SWAT after me. Through an emulator, and it's not like I hadn't played games in the last like 4 or 5 years. I had, but a lot of them I would start and then never finish, or I would start and I would finish it maybe like 3 years later. Chrono Trigger was the first game in about 5 years that I put in, and once I put it in, I played it pretty much non-stop until completion. I missed classes. The truth is, Chrono Trigger, after I played that game, suddenly I was playing games again. And I credit it as the game that got me back into gaming. Like, I don't think I could, I think I would be kind of like my brother now, who, when he was younger, played video games a lot. But now that he's a bit older, he's got, real life sets in, and naturally we can't play video games as much as we used to.
Bite your tongue.
Yeah, see, it's a tragedy for those of you out there who are under the age of 18. You will eventually find out you can't play video games as much as you want to anymore.
That's not true.
I credit Chrono Trigger as the game that made me a gamer again, because there will always be a period between the ages of 16 to sort of 21 when people go through this kind of period of I'm too old for video games in their brain. They may not necessarily mean it, but a lot of people do go through that sort of phase. Or real life responsibilities kick in. You get interested in girls or boys or whatever you want to get interested in. Dogs, sheep if you live in Wales. People generally speaking, they don't play video games as much when they grow up, because especially once they are growing up, they're trying to earn money and pay rent and pay for food and stuff.
I think it's especially impressive because, yeah, you didn't play Chrono Trigger back in the day, and that's kind of the power that these games still have. Like, I saw somebody on Twitter talking about how they were playing Final Fantasy VI for the first time, and how much it enchanted them in a way. And they went on and on Twitter for days about how it was just this amazing experience that really did still hold up after all these years. And that just shows, impressive graphics are great and all, but you can't. Quality writing, quality gameplay, and it's not like Chrono Trigger's an ugly game. I mean, you have those amazing Akira Toriyama character designs, and you have I mean, it's a special game. To me, it represents. It's close to a perfect game as I've ever found, and it just has so much to find, so much to explore, and the story is just terrific. It's a great story with a lot of memorable characters, memorable setting, and at the same time, it really does feel like its own thing. It doesn't just feel like an also-ran of another game. Chrono Trigger was something different and unique. And as influential as Final Fantasy games have been, I feel like Chrono Trigger's been pretty damn equally influential, which is especially impressive considering, there's only officially been one other game in the series, which we may or may not talk about. No, we're not going to talk about it.
No,
Nothing against it. It's not a bad game, it's not Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, I like Chrono Cross, but I'll put it this way. While Chrono Trigger, I played almost start to finish. Chrono Cross, I still have not gone past the first disc.
Yeah. I beat it. I didn't, I only ever got like 2 of the endings.
As we'll go into soon about PlayStation RPGs, much as I love them, they take some getting used to in the modern era.
There was a lot of issues with Chrono Cross, not least of which the fact that they had to change the character designs, and that really is a blow to the whole identity. It just didn't. But yeah, I don't want to go too much into that. Basically, this is a Final Fantasy retrospective, but I wanted to at least touch a little bit on Chrono Trigger. To me, I own it. I've bought it numerous times. I haven't bought it on iOS yet, just because they overcharge like hell for it. But I have it on DS. And it's it's something I'll never let go of. I want to always have a playable copy of this game within reach, because I never know when the mood's going to strike me, and it's such a wonderful game. The music is so. This is a game that just draws you in. This was a game that, between the graphics, the music, and the gameplay, and the story and the characters, this was a game that drew me into its world like few others ever have, and it's something special, even in a series that is remarkable, even from a company that has produced some of the greatest RPGs of all time, and arguably some of the greatest games of all time, period. Whatever you think of their recent work, Chrono Trigger is something special. It really frustrates me that basically, when it was made, it was this unique coming together of people from different companies, and so it was this dream team, once-in-a-lifetime thing. But since then, Square Enix is now a single company and has been for a long time, and you would think they could get off their asses and get us a goddamn proper sequel. Ugh.
Especially considering how many people have actually bought it since then. I mean, the DS sales are pretty damn high, and I'm pretty sure the iPhone sales are pretty high.
As special as Chrono Trigger was, I refuse to believe you could not create something that could at least honor its legacy.
I was very fortunate that I got a chance to actually play a very early version of Crimson Echoes, the fan-made version. God damn, why didn't they just buy that? That was great.
Copyright and all that stupidity. Yeah, if you don't know, Crimson Echo was this amazing, epic fan sequel. And when I say, we're talking a game that
arguably is as well written as the original.
And this was not some minor thing. This was like as long as the original game, if not longer. Followed up with our main characters because it used assets from the original Chrono Trigger along with new assets being, that they made. But it didn't just ignore Chrono Cross. It did acknowledge it had happened. It did address it, but it didn't move things forward. There's something inside of me that tells me it probably wouldn't have been that simple, but damn it, they should have just bought it and published it and fuck it.
When you're as powerful as a company like Square Enix, you can do that shit. I know this for a fact.
Hire them, make it official. It's because they pulled. If you don't know, they pulled it literally. They basically sent a cease and desist literally days before it was supposed to come out, and that was kind of the real dick move. It wasn't like they were going to be charging for it or anything. And I know this is a gray area. I know fan games like this are technically a gray area, but that's bullshit, and we know it. It's the same kind of bullshit that's leading Nintendo to their hideous kind of treatment of Let's Plays. No, this is not. A fan-made thing should be covered, and this would not have hurt you. You were not making a Chrono game at the time. You were doing nothing with the property. This was a labor of love. If you could find it, go look it up on YouTube. There's a full play on YouTube. There's a full play of it. There was at one point. I don't know if it's still out there. We're talking like something like 60 videos, hours and hours long, but you can at least experience the basic story. It's a shame what could have been, maybe. But regardless, Chrono Trigger was something special, and it will always have a place in my heart.
Yeah, and its story isn't overly complicated, like 6 or 7.
There is time travel and stuff.
But that's the thing. It's really simplistic time travel, almost. It's like, it keeps itself pretty simple. And it doesn't overly complicate things. It doesn't have too many themes that are like... It's definitely a game that anyone of all ages can enjoy. Like young kids really trying to play Final Fantasy 7 or 6 would get a little bit confused. I know I did a little bit.
There's no fat on it, is what I would say, which is amazing when you consider there's like 12 different endings and so many different variations and hidden things and.
It's almost like a Disney movie in a way. It's like anyone could enjoy it, or a Marvel movie. Anyone could enjoy it. I remember, on my brother's 21st birthday, I got him a DS. He used it for a good 2 years and then just kind of put it aside for a while. Like I said earlier, he was not very much of an intense gamer after he turned 16 either. And then I think around his 24th birthday, I just come back from New York and I got him a copy of Chrono Trigger on the DS. And for the next 6 months, he was using his DS consistently playing Chrono Trigger, like on the train on the way to work. He worked at a law firm at the time, so we're talking about someone who has sort of a pretty serious, prestigious job and real adult responsibilities, was playing Chrono Trigger every day, and he absolutely loved it. He got through the entire game, and like he said, it is one of the only games he has played since then that he got through. Hell, I've seen so many people who have gone back and played Chrono Trigger the whole way through. I know I saw about a year or two ago, Mara Wilson was playing through it on Twitter. Like, she was like sort of live tweeting her playthrough of Chrono Trigger. It's like literally everyone of all ages, genders, and whatever just seems to love this game.
And even if you don't necessarily, it's one of the RPGs. Even if you think you don't like RPGs, and if you don't like RPGs, can I just say I'm a little confused why you're watching such a long, multi-part involved series all about one of the prototypical RPG series? Maybe, hey, you're welcome. Please do not. I'm not trying to send you away. Welcome, thank you. Maybe you just watch it because you like me and Petros, and if that's the case, great. But I'm just saying.
Hi, Mom.
Thanks. But seriously, even if you think you don't like RPGs, or maybe you don't like JRPGs in general, I suspect this one can win you over.
Yeah, I could say some bad words about Final Fantasy VI. I could even say some bad words about my favorite game of all time, which we're going to be talking about next, Final Fantasy VII. But I just literally can't say a bad word about Chrono Trigger. It would physically repulse me to, because it's just a beautiful, simplistic, lovely yet fun game, and it is just wonderful. And I love the characters. I love everyone from. There's not a character that's wasted in this game at all either. Like every character gets a good full A B C development rather than just if I have a complaint about six, it's that there are perhaps too many characters and there's not enough time devoted to each of them. Whereas Chrono Trigger really just develops every character really well. They don't just go, here's where they start, here's where they finish, this is how they get there. They go from A to B. Characters in Chrono Trigger, like even the mute Chrono has character development. Magus has development. He spoiler alert, starts as a villain, and you can later recruit him in your party. And then he has an arc throughout both of those sections of the game. So he goes through A to B to C to D in his development, and that's something that's actually quite rare for like multicast characters. And only one of the Final Fantasy games can I really say did that, and we'll get to that later.
Yeah, I think it's a shame more games haven't followed in this one's shoes enough.
Yeah.
Postscript. I am the wind. Whoosh. 20 years ago, 16, playing Chrono Trigger for the first time, hearing that ticking clock sound, hearing the first beats of that tune, that opening theme that will come to haunt so many of my dreams. Chrono Trigger was the first game soundtrack I imported. I loved it that much. I wanted its music because I wanted to hear it whenever possible. It inspired me. It drove my dreams. Understand, a lot of games shaped me as a gamer. A lot of games cemented my love of this medium. Few more so than Final Fantasy IV, then 2, or Final Fantasy VI, then 3. But it was Chrono Trigger, that truly firmed it all into place, locked it all down, determined that I would be a gamer for the rest of my life. There's so many moments from that game I remember. I remember, for instance, the big moment, the big sacrifice. I remember the way my youngest brother, Aaron, reacted. He was only 8 at the time. I was 16. I thought I knew everything. But Aaron, he was still sensitive. And so when the big moment came, he got very upset. We had to stop playing for a couple hours. He actually started crying, and he didn't do that very often, but that was the power of the game. It sucked you in. It drew you in. It made you care about these characters. It made you worry about Marley when she disappeared. It made you get emotional when Luca managed to save her mother. Or you'd laugh at some antic of Ayla's as she did some ridiculous crazy thing. Visiting Mother Brain, discovering the truth of Robo's people, as it were. Bringing hope back to the future, even if it was just in the form of a little seed. Or the simple power of 3 teenagers looking upon a dark future and saying, no, hell no, we won't allow this. We can change things. We can shape our own future. We have that power. When even sometimes the bad guys died. Because you could understand what drove them, what made them do the terrible things they did. Some of them were tragic figures, doomed as much by time and fate as any choices of their own. The Reptites. Oh, the Reptites. When Robo makes his big sacrifice. And speaking of which, it's amazing the little moments from Chrono Trigger that still remain with me. That little animation, for instance, when you're in the past and you see Robo endlessly working on those fields, and the way his animations change every time you go back out into the world map. It's a delightful little touch. One not necessary at all for the overall game, but it just adds to the personality, to the sense of feeling. One of the most primal memories of gaming I have is that moment around the campfire before Luca goes back to save her mother. Them just sitting there, talking. The characters each laying down or sitting in their own way, contemplating life, the universe, and everything that comes with it. Theorizing about what's the point of it. And also just hanging out. Being friends. Being a family. It's a moment that stays with me, even now. It's hard for me to describe the emotion it brings out, the feelings it invokes. But it's just this powerful sense that these aren't just pixels on a screen, but real characters. And to this day, not nearly enough games ever have a moment that potent in them. And it's just this simple little thing. They're just sitting around a campfire. But it's also so much more. Ah, the characters. Frog's theme. Now there's a tune that haunts me. In a good way. When you heard that song, you always knew something badass was about to happen. And speaking of badass, Magus. What can I say? We all love a bad boy, I guess. Or more exactly, we all love a bad boy who makes fairly good. I remember the first time we encounter him after the end, and we get into the big solo fight, and we end up killing him, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to kill this guy. So I go back, I revert my save, just to see what will happen, and then I find out we can recruit him. And oh, you should have seen the look of joy on my brother's faces and my own if it comes to that. We loved Magus, and from that point forward, we would include him in the party whenever possible. He just had a cool design, an interesting backstory, a fascinating personality. You know, it's the classic anti-hero, but he fit in really well with this overall group. I remember all the little mini-games, too. Trying to hold our liquor. Dancing around with Gatto. Ah, so many moments. Discovering for the first time New Game Plus. Uncovering all the insane endings. I'll never forget my reaction to the Reptide ending. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Or the ending where the girls are checking out all the guys and we actually get to hear Chrono speak. And then there are the more serious endings. My favorite is the one where they sail off in the Epoch, heading off into another adventure, into endless adventure, flying out through time and space, overlooking all the people in their lives, both then, now, and yet to be. It's a wonderful feeling. It feels like the adventure will never truly end for these characters I had come to love. And that's because it won't. I'm confident that Chrono Trigger will remain an important game, even as time continues to pass. It's on a whole variety of platforms, and every time it's released for a new one, I smile. Because that means people who have never gotten a chance to experience the magic of this game have yet to uncover the secrets of Magus, the terrible history of the Reptites, the truth of Lavos. Oh, Lavos. Oh, one of the great final boss fights of all history, especially if you approach him on foot. Woo! Talk about your epic showdowns. But yes, so many people get to experience that for the first time, and I just smile at the thought. I said it a lot in the original recording, and I'll say it again now because it's true. Chrono Trigger is special. It stands out as a unique title from a company that is the height of its creative powers. We may never quite see its like again, but even if we don't, at least we have it. Now, if you'll excuse me, the black wind howls, and I need to answer. For Unrepentant Geeking, I'm Shaun Cronenfeld, wishing you all happy gaming. Till next time.